Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. We are very happy to be talking about the topic on the agenda today, which is compliance in sectional title schemes. We find that it is a very interesting topic for all of us, and a lot of people are unsure about how to go about the compliance within their sectional title scheme and what is required. So we've got today Shirley Baillie, who is the owner of S.Baillie and Associates. She will be one of our speakers today. So Shirley's passion has been and still is the sectional title industry, with her mission to educate those working and living in it. So she has 38 years in and around the industry, and she has a thorough understanding, enabling her to bridge the gap between the legal and the practical. Shirley created a popular book, Keyword Access to the Sectional Titles Act, which allows owners and trustees to access and readily, by means of a detailed index of all keywords and topics, to access the Sectional Title Schemes Management Act, the Sectional Title Act, and all the other registered regulations that come along with it. We've also got Willie Roos, who is the CEO of Strathafen, and Willie has practiced as a property attorney for over 20 years. He has been involved in sectional title management for over 8 years, and he has started Strathafen in 2014 with the goal of assisting bodies corporates with their funding without catching them in a debt trap. So I'm going to hand over to Willie in a second, but we were actually at an event the other day, and someone mentioned to us that they're so happy that we're doing all this training for everyone. And yes, we love to do training, and that's, one of the main things that we like to do, and to educate the market. But that's actually not what Strathafen does. So I'm going to hand over to Willie for a moment, just so he can explain to everyone what it is that Strathafen actually does.
Thanks, Daniela. Yeah, I don't want this to become an advert. I mean, we've always tried to just at the back slot in what we do. And then when my partner was approached and thanked for what we do for the industry, and he said, what do we do? And the guy said, no, we understand that you guys do training. We thought, well, we're missing a point, so maybe we should just tell people what we're actually doing. So Strathafen is a registered financial services provider under the National Credit Act, and we provide finance for community schemes that is in need of finance. So we assist body corporates and homeowners association, and we've got various financial products that we assist them with. And I think the product that we are most well known in the industry for is our debt purchase products, where we purchase the outstanding levy book of a body corporate, and we then collect that levies through our own firms of attorneys, panel of attorneys, at our risk and at our cost. It is not a loans product, so bodies corporate get the funding immediately. They don't have to repay it to us, and we will then do the collection, as I said, through our firms of attorneys that are on our panel. We also have a fixed term loan model or asset finance model, where a body corporate can borrow money over a term period at a fixed rate. It is not connected to arrear levies, so it is not a product that will catch your scheme into a debt trap. So you would know that you're going to repay this loan over a 2-year period or a 3-year period in accordance with the means of the scheme. And then we've got a product that is a combination or a hybrid of the two, where we purchase outstanding levies. The body corporate still requires additional funding for what they need to do, maintenance or fixed assets and so forth. And we then do a loan over a fixed term period, not collected again to the outstanding levies, as we have already paid for those, and the body corporate already has those funds in their hands, don't have to repay us, and then also the balance we do within the loan portion of that. So that's what Strathafen really does, but we are passionate about sectional title. We are passionate about compliance, because every time that we do a loan or a debt purchase, we actually have to go through the compliance of that scheme and make sure that what the scheme has done is compliant with the law, and that what we can recover in respect of levies is recoverable in the sense that it was done in a legal and a fair manner. So we've got a compliance department that does this. So compliance is very important to us, and I think that's why we're talking about it. It's going to feel like running through a list, and at the end of the day, we are going to give you a list as a free giveaway with a little tick box to say, well, we do this, we don't do this, or we must check this, and so forth. So we will do that at the end as well as a free giveaway. But excuse us if it's going to feel like running through lists, because it virtually is a lot of that, and compliance is that.
And there's a lot to get through.
Yeah.
Willie, before we hand over to Shirley, I think it's important for us to know, I want to put a poll up just to find out how people feel about their current compliance. So the question is, do you think that your scheme is compliant with all legislation relating to sectional title schemes in general? I'll give you a couple of minutes to answer.
Is the poll up?
It's running, yes. Can you see it?
I can't.
Okay, I'll share it with everyone shortly.
Daniela, is it showing? Because on my side, it's not.
I'm just sorry, everyone's just answering for a moment and then I'll share it.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. So we just
I didn't see it on my side.
Yeah.
But
I did see it on mine. Yeah.
Is it because I'm also a presenter, maybe? Hey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably.
Okay, it is showing. Thanks, Diane.
So I'm going to give it one more moment. I see people are still responding. Okay, let me stop it there. And I'm going to share the results with everyone. So we've got 56% who say that they are not compliant, whereas 44% say that they are compliant.
Can I just jump in here and give some statistics from our side that we are running in our compliance department. And I see that there is 45% of schemes that believe that they are compliant. Since 2014, we have not had a scheme that is 100% compliant. We have not ever had one scheme. Not one single managing agent, not one single scheme that has been compliant. Obviously, we work around that. We try and get the problems resolved and get the resolutions in place and so forth that are not in place. But from our point of view, we have seen a huge amount of non-compliance in terms of the Act. But thanks for the information. Okay, let's go for it, Shirley.
Well, good morning to everybody. This is my favorite topic, so I'm so happy that I got chosen to be part of this. I want to just give you an example because I have lots of them. In my daily life, I come up against them in my own body's corporate, let alone the ones I'm training. When I asked Chairman what education he had planned for the recently elected trustees, he replied, "I learned on the job, so they can too." Is this what your trustees are doing? Are the owners aware of the fact that the trustees are practicing on you? Because I think a lot of it's happening. At its largest level, compliance arises from acts passed through Parliament. All acts are equally important. In terms of business compliance, there needs to be a way of establishing and minimizing the risks or threats on the company, including finances, the organization on a widespread level, or regulations resulting from various violations of the Act or regulations going against the Code of Conduct or standard practices. Our bodies corporate, do you realize, are small to medium-sized businesses with other people's money invested in it. Running business needs skills and experience and legislation to which one must comply in order to survive and give the best possible outcome. There's so much of this going on. I mean, this is a daily issue in body corporates, but it's a daily issue in business. So we do need compliance. Every single entity needs legislation and compliance to be carried out. It hopes to have a chance of running smoothly and running well and financially sound. Otherwise, we have disaster. Let me just take two statutes that come through, and just think about the out result if you didn't have some compliance, because it's not perfectly complied with. What about the Criminal Procedure Act of 1977, which is an act of Parliament exactly like the sectional title legislation, which governs the criminal procedures and South African legal system? What about the Health Professionals Act 58 of 1974, which was passed to control the education, training, and registration of practicing health professionals registered under this act? Imagine non-compliance with these two acts, and we would have serious negative effects arising therefrom. What about your medical assistant if you didn't know what the doctor's training had been or the standard that was being delivered by the nurses? And what would happen to all those people against whom crimes have been committed? But are the trustees recognizing this? Even though ignorance is no defense, and the Sectional Title Act is all the three acts that we talk about and we will mention just now, is also an act of Parliament. It seems that far less cognizance is taken of the Sectional Title Act. It's kind of there. Maybe this is because they don't have jail sentences yet for people not complying, or maybe they don't have big enough fines. But it doesn't mean that you can't comply. It doesn't mean you don't comply, and it does mean you have to comply. The legislation for sectional title is embodied in the three acts: the Community Schemes Service Act, the Sectional Title Management Act, and the Sectional Titles Act of 96, which was amended. This is the legislative framework in which we, living in sectional title, have to adhere, so that we can all have a better quality of life in our sectional title complexes, have acceptable surroundings in which to enjoy ourselves, have orderliness, have boundaries so that people do things that are not up the nose or irritating to other people. We have to have sound financial administration functioning. And hopefully the treatment that we all get would make our lives so much better. And if we don't have it, we're going to go under administration, or maybe lose all value in our sections. You need to think about the whole thing holistically. I want to say that it's not just about the body corporate not complying. People blame the body corporate, they blame the trustees, they blame the managing agent, blame. But each person within a context of sectional title has a role to play. And who is contributing to the non-compliance? Let me start off with an analogy. To become a qualified driver, one must study, pass the learners, including the eye test, and then the driver's test, and subsequently renew the license on a regular basis. This is the law. The road carnage is bad enough, but if there was no existing legislation and consequences, it would be worse. But in sectional title, we don't have a qualifying test for prospective owners to pass before they buy into sectional title. So we don't know when we buy in, and it's the first time we've done it, what we're buying into. And we don't know if we're getting the best deal, and we don't know if it's going to be okay for our home forever. The second thing is we do not have a qualifying exam for people to become trustees. And thirdly, as yet, we don't have a qualifying exam for a portfolio manager to become such. So let's break it down into owners who are not compliant. They buy in and they don't know that they're automatically part of the body corporate. So they're always saying, oh, we're going to complain to the body corporate. I'm sure all of you have heard that, and you just have to laugh if you know better, because they are part of the body corporate. And owners have to maintain their section in good repair. They have to comply with municipal regulations. They have to give access to the EUA and their section. They need to respect and work within the conduct rules and legislation. And most importantly, so that you don't have to go to Willie, they have to pay their levies and their services on time. But fortunately, we have people like Strathafen who do pick up the thread. Owners who are also contributing to the general non-compliance by not being aware of the needs of the body corporate are doing so by nominating incorrect people to be trustees. They nominate their friends because they think they'll get some favors. They nominate people they don't know because so-and-so said they should, or they nominate whoever off the street, basically. They don't know that these people have got any skills that are going to be needed to contribute to the best running of the body corporate. And this is an issue that should be addressed, and it will only be addressed if they know more, if the owners know more about sectional title. Let's talk about trustees. How do they contribute to non-compliance? Well, you know, it's like giving your 2 million rand to a non-registered financial advisor. Because would you do that? I doubt it. And yet you've paid 2 or 3 or 4 million for buying into a complex, whether it's homeowners or sectional title, and there are these trustees who don't know anything running it. I mean, it just doesn't make sense at all. So trustees have a fiduciary duty to actually comply. The CSOS law says so. Remember, it's an act of parliament. It says that you have to know, be knowledgeable, have an open mind, apply your mind. And you can't do that if you don't have any understanding of the acts. So the trustees are contributing to non-compliance by ignoring the framework of legislation, which sets out the responsibilities, duties, and the powers so clearly set out in the Sectional Title Act. So now we get to the point of the result of non-compliance. A dysfunctional, poorly managed body corporate, which brings everybody's quality of life down, as well as the value of their investment. In this case, it is not easy to sell, because when people need funding, they go to the bank. So they have to get the bank to inspect, and the bank are going to look at maintenance. They're going to look at the financial audited financial statements to see if there's enough money, or it's qualified, or got any irregularities in it. So how do we deal with non-compliance? We do have CSOS, which is an option. It's cheap. We all got our, sometimes it works extremely well, sometimes not so, but we do have an option of going to CSOS. We have the magistrates and high courts for all of the role players, the trustees, the body corporate, and the owners, but it's very expensive. So let's comply. If everybody complies, it will be so much better. And do you know that if the body corporate or any particular trustees do not carry out the duties required of them, then the body corporate or the owner can actually sue a trustee in their own right, or an owner can sue the body corporate against whom they, part of which they are, but against whom they have complaints. So after all this bad news, what is the solution? The only solution, to my way of thinking, is compliance, is increasing compliance so much more than it is at the moment. And that is only done through education. And thank goodness to Strathafen, who provides part of the education we need on a regular basis. And not only today, but the website is so useful to go to. So I hope that this has woken you up to a few facts.
Thank you, Shirley. Can I just start by saying, and Shirley has also mentioned that, that the legislative framework in which we function as bodies corporate is the Sectional Titles Act of 1986, the Sectional Title Schemes Management Act of 2011, the Community Scheme Ombud Services Act of 2011, and then various other pieces of legislation that are applicable to people or persons, natural persons and juristic persons. So, for example, the Constitution is also applicable. If one have regard to the Bill of Rights, then the right to privacy is one of those rights that come to the forefront, and we need to have a look at that as well to determine if owners are entitled to information as the rules require. The POPI Act, the Promotion of Access to Information Act, Occupational Health and Safety Act. I mean, if people are working at a scheme, Are they qualified to do so? Can they work at height and so forth? So all those things need to be looked at by trustees. The Labour Relations Act, when we appoint people working in the scheme, people can't just be fired willy-nilly, and you have to follow the law in that regard. So there are various pieces of legislation that actually form part. The Income Tax Act, if I'm thinking about that as well. So various pieces of legislation that comes to mind that are applicable. In general, what we're going to look at today is the Sectional Titles Act, the Sectional Title Schemes Management Act, and the Ombuds Services Act. Otherwise, the scope just becomes too wide for us to look at each and every little aspect, and we at a later stage in training can look at different other aspects. But let's just start with that. So general compliance is that obviously you need your conduct rules and your management rules to be registered in terms of Section 10 of the CSOS Act at CSOS. If those rules were registered prior to that, they are still applicable. And if you want to make amendments, then those amendments have to be filed with CSOS and has to be approved by them, and they would issue then a relevant certificate that has happened. So something that we find a lot is that BCs don't update their domicilium sitandi et executandi. That is the address for service of legal process. So once a body corporate becomes embroiled in a legal action, the summons will be served at that chosen address. Management Rule 4 requires that to be given, the notice need to be given to CSOS and to all members and bondholders that this is the address. We seldom see that, and we most often see that that address is still with a previous managing agent. So once you then want to issue a summons, that body corporate is not going to even be aware of the fact that legal process has started against that scheme. So it is of utmost importance to make sure that address is changed regularly and correctly. Then once the scheme has been established after the registration of the first unit, then the first meeting or first AGM needs to be held. Prescribed Management Rule 16 deals extensively with the requirement of that first meeting, and I think that is a subject for a whole separate seminar or webinar. We can do that at a later stage, because I think most schemes that are here are already established and is already running, and therefore don't require us to go into that at this stage. So the first thing that needs to happen is we need to have a board of trustees in terms of Section 7 of the Act, and the owners must determine the number of trustees from time to time. Where a scheme is larger than 4 members, those trustees must be elected at an AGM on an annual basis. Where the scheme is smaller than 4 member units, those trustees, all 4 members would then be the trustees of that scheme. As I said, those members need to, or the trustees needs to be elected on a yearly basis, and there is no hindrance in the Act that people can remain a trustees for a number of years. There's no legal requirement that states a trustee can only be a trustee for 3 years or 5 years or 7 years. That's a question that we get a lot. As long as that person is nominated, is not in breach, and is then elected, that person can serve as a trustee, and there is no time limit on that. Trustees should have their or hold their regular meetings to conduct the business of the scheme, and that is a legal requirement in terms of Management Rule 9. And at these meetings, they must resolve to apply the funds of the scheme in accordance with the budget approved by the members. So the members approve the budget that can be spent, and the trustees must then act as the executive in accordance with that budget. There is a question if this budget can only be spent in respect of every specific item as it is. Prof. Paddock is of the opinion that you can only spend, if legal fees were budgeted for 50,000 Rand, then you can only spend 50,000 Rand. There's also another school of thought that says, no, a budget is a budget, it's not an actual. And in actual fact, what is important is the bottom line, and that the trustees can spend in accordance with the bottom line. So if, for instance, they can save on security, the security budget was 300,000 for the year, but they employ a firm at 250,000 Rand, they would then be entitled to reallocate that 50,000 Rand to the legal fee budget and spend that, and that will still fall within the budget. I think from a practical point of view, and me having managed schemes many years ago, we have seen that schemes many times miscalculate fees in respect of municipal fees, services, and so forth. And if one cannot move money, then it will become almost impractical to manage that scheme. So I support the group that says that it's the bottom line that's important, and trustees must fall always within that bottom line. They can also then, as trustees, appoint their employees or agents in terms of written agreements that needs to be in place. So all those contracts needs to be in writing. They must compile minutes of their meetings and their resolutions within 7 days, and it must be distributed to those people that were entitled to attend those meetings within the 7-day period. Bondholders and people that also then required, like owners. So Shirley, before the meeting or before the webinar, said that she goes to all her trustees meetings. So if she has given notice to the trustees that she wants to be there, then she must also be included in that mailing list in respect of the minutes. So she must be given that as well. The quorum of trustees is 50% of the trustees, but it can never be less than 2. And the decisions that are made is made by majority decision in terms of prescribed management rule 13. Okay, documents, also a big problem that we experience, documents signed on behalf of bodies corporate. So the contracts that we have referred to is valid and binding if it is signed in accordance with the authority of a trustee's resolution. So firstly, there must be a decision by the trustees at a meeting of trustees, which is recorded in the minutes that that decision was taken, that a certain trustees can sign this agreement. So 2 trustees and 2 trustees or the managing agent can sign a 15B3 certificate, so a clearance certificate, and 2 trustees or 1 trustee plus a managing agent can sign any other documents on behalf of the body corporate. That is in terms of prescribed management rule 10.
Willie?
So, yes.
Sorry, can I just ask something, because I don't think it's clear to everybody from what I understand.
Sure.
If at the beginning of the year you've got your new trustees, can you say, all right, this trustees is making a decision that Joe Bloggs and Mary Smith can sign up to 20,000, or that's all the municipals, the standard amounts that go through every month can go through automatically? Is that a right of the trustees to make such a blanket decision?
The trustees can make and I will deal with it a bit later on. So the trustees can make a decision like that. It is legal, and they also have the right to revoke that again. So at the end of the day, they can say, right, we are authorizing the managing agent to pay the municipal account on a monthly basis, and do that and make that decision and authorize the managing agent in a resolution, and then the managing agent can lawfully act in that manner. So it can be done, and we will deal with it a bit later on. I have mentioned, or I have put it in my notes that I've done. All right. Resolutions of trustees must be adopted by the majority of trustees. present and voting at that meeting. If there is a tie of votes, the chairperson has a casting vote in respect of that specific matter that is to be decided upon. In no other way is a chairperson different from other trustees. And is he just merely a trustee that chairs the meeting, but when there is a tie of votes, that person then has an additional vote to break the tie? And that is, and I would think in general practice, a trustee or a chairman that does that would not, I would always, and I've always said, rather go back to the owners and have a discussion with the owners again. If there's a tie of votes, then it tells us that this resolution is not so popular or shouldn't just be accepted. So rather go back to the owners, get a mandate from owners, and then come back and make that decision. I think from a practical point of view, that is the better option to follow. But in law, it is the chairperson's right to then have that vote to break the tie. Okay, AGMs.
Sorry, just one question that's come in that's related to exactly what you're talking about now. Is it possible for a trustee to sign a contract after he has informed the body corporate that he is selling his unit?
A trustee remains a trustee until he has resigned off the board or is not being elected. It is not a requirement for a person to be an owner of a unit in a scheme to be a trustee. And as such, even if he is not a owner of the unit anymore, but he is still a trustee, and that was an authorization that was given by a resolution of the Board of Trustees, then it will be a valid action that was taken.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm also seeing I've got a question whether the chairperson overrule, amend. I can't see, I couldn't see what that was after it was gone, before it was gone. Okay, but in any event, Daniela, you can have a look and come back to me regarding that question. Okay, then AGMs, I mean, AGMs in general, 14 days notice needs to be given to all the members, the bondholders, future development right holders, if there are any, and the managing agent. The notice must be accompanied by the agenda of that meeting, a comprehensive summary of all the documents that will be considered, so your financials, reports, and so forth, and also then proxy forms. Notice must be given to all the members at their primary sections, which is their domicilium sitandi, or if they have changed their domicilium sitandi in terms of Management Rule 15, then at that changed address. It can also be given at the recent physical address. It can also be sent by postal, by email, and by fax in terms of Management Rule 15.6 as well. Then again, minutes of the AGM has to be delivered to owners in the same way, within 7 days after that meeting was concluded. SGMs, normally a 30-day notice, and what is also something that we see a lot in respect of loans and loan finance, where we are dealing with special resolutions and unanimous resolutions, that the wording of those special and unanimous resolutions are not included, and they should be included. It is a requirement in terms of Management Rule 17 that the specific wording that's going to be voted upon must be included in there. Okay, as I said, the first general meeting, Management Rule 16, not going to deal with that today. Okay. Other requirements in respect of your AGMs is that they should be held within 4 months after the financial year end. The order of the business in that AGM is the confirmation of the proxies, determination of the quorum, the election of the chairperson for that meeting. It is not necessarily the chairperson of the trustees. If he does not want to chair that meeting, then somebody else can be chosen. In practice, we see a lot that it is the managing agent that would act as the chairperson in the AGMs, because they've got so much knowledge and experience in respect of these meetings. So no problem with that at all. Proof that that notice was sent to all the owners. Then the agenda needs to be approved. Approve the previous AGM minutes. I know in practice we seeing a problem here where CSOS requires the change of rules, that they require the approved minutes. If that meeting was held, you cannot have approved minutes unless the next meeting is held. And therefore only after that meeting, if we need to follow what CSOS is asking, that we will only be able a year after be able to amend your rules. So I think Zerlinda and I are speaking to them and trying to get them to change that they understand that those minutes can't be approved. They're only approved after the next AGM. Right, you need to deal with previously unfinished business that was standing over. You need to deal with the special resolutions of owners and bondholders that required meetings. If they did, 25% of owners that required a meeting, if that is one of those meetings, then you need to deal with that. You need to receive a report of the activities and the decisions of the trustees made during that year. You need to approve the insurance replacement values. Approve the budget for the next year, determine the insurance cover, consider the financial statements in respect to the audited financial statements, appoint a new auditor, determine the amount of trustees to be elected at the meeting, the election of those trustees, report of lodgement of amendments of rules. So if there was an amendment, that needs to be reported, and the progress in respect of that needs to be conveyed to the members and owners. If there are any new or further business that owners want to place onto the agenda, and then all important directions and restrictions by owners on trustees in terms of Section 7 of the Act. This section is very important, where owners put directions and restrictions on trustees, and it must be well considered. One must not put the directions and restrictions on trustees that will actually hinder the running and the maintenance and so forth of the scheme. If, for example, a restriction is put on owners that they can only spend 30,000 Rand without going back to owners for a confirmation of that amount, and there's no thought being put into it, but the municipal bill is 50 or 100,000 Rand a month, then trustees will have a difficulty, or they will act outside of their mandate if they now go and pay these things. So one must think carefully how you word those restrictions that you place and the directions that you place on the trustees. Okay.
Willie, sorry to interrupt you, but there's a couple
Sure.
of questions that have come in, and
Okay.
a lot about emails. So can special general meeting agendas be sent by email only, seeing that the postal services is in disarray?
Yeah, you know, what is our view about that? I mean, it says that you can also send it as such. So you must try, or you must attempt to service in the manners as prescribed, and that is an additional way. So that is how the Act stands. I also don't know why the Act requires faxing. I don't think anybody is faxing any longer. So those are some changes that needs to be made in respect of the Act, but you need to try and serve in accordance with the Act. Okay.
One more question. With regards to the discussion you had about AGM and the conduct rules having to be approved by the next AGM meeting in order to get them sent through, can you call, can you call an SGM to endorse the rules and so move the matter on faster?
you need to approve one of the items of an agenda of an AGM is to approve the minutes of the previous AGM. So that is specifically in the Act required as one of your items to be decided upon at the next AGM. I think from a practical point of view, I think that should be able to be done. On the Sectional Title Schemes Management Group, there's also a difference of opinion. People like Nigel Capito are of the opinion that those items that are specific, I think Zerlinda believes that as well, that those items that are specifically reserved for the agenda on an AGM can only be dealt with at an AGM. I think that reasonableness is the key. We had a long discussion about the amount of trustees, and if it turns out, for example, at an AGM that the scheme decided to appoint 3 trustees, and then when the scheme is starting to run, they then realize that these 3 trustees are never going to be able to manage 300 units. And then you need to now wait until the next AGM to change that to 7 or 9. I think that's impractical and it will cause harm to the scheme. So I believe that you would then be able to go back to a special general meeting and change that and then elect further trustees. Because that is just a reasonable thing. So if the majority of owners are in agreement, I cannot see for one moment why that can't be accepted. So yeah, I believe that is something that one would be able to do, but on a strict interpretation of the law, one would not be able to do so. So it's one of those gray areas that my compliance department hate when I say it's a gray area. So yeah, so who knows? I think it's reasonable. Quorums at general meetings, schemes with less than 4 sections, 66% of the owners needs to be there that in value. So in PQ, to form a quorum. In other schemes, 33% of owners must be there in value, so in PQ. If the quorum is not met within 30 minutes, then obviously that meeting has to be postponed to the same time, same date, same place, 1 week in advance. 30 minutes after the time that meeting should be start, the people that are there then forms a quorum. This is not applicable in respect of unanimous resolutions. Unanimous resolutions in terms of Section 1 of the Act requires 80% participation of owners, and it is a heightened quorum, so no unanimous resolution can be taken at such a meeting. Special resolutions can be taken, but then there's a mechanism where where less than 50% of owners voted in favor of that, and then it must be postponed. The implementation must be postponed. So yeah, so that's regarding quorums. Voting at general meetings, something that we still see a lot of. Motions that are seconded, it's not necessary. The motions must be adopted by a majority unless it's a special or a unanimous resolution. Members that are in default, so members that have got CSOS orders against them or court orders against them, are excluded from voting on ordinary resolutions, but they are not excluded from voting on special and unanimous resolutions. So that's also something that we see a lot of problems in that regard. Proxies must be submitted in terms of Management Rule 20, 48 hours prior to the meeting, but can also be submitted to the chairperson at the meeting. Why the two say the two opposite things, nobody knows. You need not to be a member of a scheme to have a proxy. Managing agent can't have a proxy, an employee of the managing agent can't have a proxy, and an employee of the body corporate can't have a proxy. When a vote is taken, the chairperson must, in terms of Management Rule 20, must announce what the outcome of that meeting, of that vote is, and it must be recorded in the minutes of that meeting. Okay, we said earlier on that within 4 months after the financial year end, there should be an AGM. All schemes after the Sectional Title Schemes Management Act was accepted and promulgated. The year end is 30 September. Schemes prior to that, in terms of the old Act, have a specific date that is registered in their scheme documents that can be changed, but they will then vary. So all schemes then within that 4-month period after their specific year end needs to have their AGM. Body corporates are not allowed to make loans out of the funds of the body corporate unless they have a unanimous resolution by owners to do so. So you can't go and lend money to the employees of the fund by deciding the trustees make a decision. We feel sorry for this person, somebody passed away, and we're going to lend this person 10,000 Rand, and it will be deducted over the next 12 months from the salary. You can't do it unless you've got a unanimous resolution. Can't refund levies that were lawfully levied and paid to owners, and you can't distribute the surplus of levies. So if you've budgeted for expenses of 3 million and at the end of the day only 2 million was expended, that 1 million Rand cannot be distributed amongst the owners in accordance with their PQs. Special levies, something that we are asked frequently about as well. Special levies can still be levied in terms of prescribed management rule 21, where additional income is required to meet an expense, and that expense cannot be reasonably delayed until the next financial year. So you can't go and raise a special levy willy-nilly. It must be something that cannot be reasonably delayed until the next financial year. So that general right that trustees had has been limited by Management Rule 21. Trustees may also, in terms of Management Rule 21, increase the levies by a maximum of 10% from the end of the financial year up till when the new AGM is being held, to make sure that there is no shortfall in respect of levies until the new budget is approved. We've had a long discussion on the sectional title group the other day about having special general meetings to approve a budget prior to the AGM being held. Again, two schools of thought. One that says that is a good idea. It makes sure that trustees can't just increase by 10% if only a 3% is going to be required, or owners can then increase 15% if 15% is going to require it until then the AGM. The other school of thought, again, it is part of the AGM minutes and can't then therefore be heard at a special general meeting. Yeah, we have a way out, luckily, in terms of the 10% in terms of Management Rule 21. Then the question, Shirley, that you asked earlier, trustees can delegate powers, duties to members, agents, and employees, and can revoke that delegation in terms of Management Rule 21(3)(g). So it is possible. Okay, something also that very few schemes have, we see that they have checking accounts or current accounts. So Management Rule 21 requires that the trustees must bank all the monies or must receive payments of all monies in an interest-bearing bank account. So in the name of the BC, or in the name of a trust account of a property practitioner or an attorney in terms of the LPC Act. So we do see that this is also frequently not complied with. Okay, the trustees must prepare their 10-year maintenance plan in terms of management rule. The trustees or the BC at a general meeting or a meeting in that respect must prepare a 10-year maintenance plan. It must have all the capital items that are going to be maintained, the condition of those items, the time period that it will be maintained over, or the repairs is being expected by, the expected cost of that, and then the expected life cycle of that item, so that one can determine what needs to be put in there. Okay, the levy maintenance and the reserve fund must, the levy maintenance or the reserve fund is determined in accordance with the formula estimated cost minus past contributions divided by the expected life. That is equal to your levy. So that is something that needs to be applied as well. Members determine how the money must be utilized by the trustees. So the members approve that plan and the trustees must act in accordance with that plan. And the trustees must report on a yearly basis to the AGM where they stand with the 10-year maintenance plan. Regarding insurance, Management Rule 23 require insurance, building at replacement value against fire and other risks. Other risks determined by owners can be added by way of special resolution. So you can't just accept any resolution in respect of, for example, additional insurance that wants to be taken out, like levy insurance, levy fund insurance, levy default insurance, those sort of things. That needs to be done by way of special resolution. Public liability insurance of not less than 10 million rand, loss of funds belonging to the BC as a result of fraud or dishonesty by the trustees, the managing agent, or employees. So that needs to be in place in terms of Management Rule 23. You need to have your valuation of your buildings every 3 years. There must be a restriction on average on your policy. So average should not be applied over the scheme as a whole. It can be applied on single units where those units are not insured to the correct value, but insured in accordance with what the bondholder requires in that regard. Where there is additional insurance, where a bondholder, for example, required additional insurance, that section is liable for that specific portion of that. And then owners are liable for excess on insurance payouts where it relates to portions of the scheme that they are that they have to look after. So they're sections, not common property. Right, trustees contributions. Trustees must give notice 13 days after the approval of the budget in terms of Management Rule 25 to owners that what their new levy is, the due date of that, the interest applicable on those arrears, and the internal dispute resolution methodology in respect of a dispute in respect of those levies. We have had a recent court case that have now said that this is not a legal requirement to raise legal levies. It is an administrative requirement, and the non-compliance with Management Rule 25 does not invalidate the levying of levies. So that has been resolved. So we know now that if you don't comply with Management Rule 25, it does not actually stop you from collecting those levies. Legal fees can't be put onto the owner's account until such a time as the judgment has been granted and the bill has been taxed or agreed. Right, then financial records. We're going to have a long list of this. This is also going to form part of the free giveaway that we're going to give you. That must be kept in terms of Management Rule 26, records of all the income and expenditure, the assets and liabilities, the amounts recovered from the members, accounts for each individual owner, the separate bank accounts for the administrative and the reserve funds, prepare financials for the financial statements for the AGM that needs to take place. Audit must be carried out in terms of Management Rule 26. by an independent auditor that did not take part in the preparation of the statement. So you can't have an audit firm or an accounting firm that does the accounting of the books and also do the audit. Can't be done, not allowed, should be an independent auditor. The management rules state that the audit need not to be carried out in accordance with the recognized audit or financial reporting framework. This, however, this management rule is a contravention of the Audit Professions Act that says no auditor shall do an audit that does not comply with the financial standards applied in South Africa in the respect of audits. So one would expect that the audits then be done in accordance with IFRS for SMEs in case of most sectional title schemes. This must be done within 4 months after the year end. The records that needs to be kept in terms of Management Rule 27, prescribed management rules and conduct rules, the minutes of the AGM and other general meetings, minutes of the trustees meetings, list of all the trustees with their full details, ID numbers, unit numbers, full names, everything, PQ schedule, exclusive use area schedule, schedule of registered bondholders, details of future development right holders, the registered sectional title plans and amendments to it, the written contracts between the BC and every service provider, all orders in the respect of adjudication orders made by CISOs, arbitration orders, court orders, all the budgets for all the years, income tax returns, insurance policies, correspondence sent and received by the BC and trustees. All the records needs to be held for a 6-year period, except minutes, resolutions, and voting results, which must be kept in perpetuity to prove that those were the resolutions taken. So yeah, so those are the things. I try to rush because I see that we're running out of time. There are various other legislation, as I said in the beginning, that also impact community scheme living. Trustees must take notice of that. They do not function in a vacuum. So all that legislation must be taken into consideration when decisions are made. So 2 things, Daniela. I've gone through a lot. I see there's a lot of questions. I think we can answer the questions in writing, those that we didn't answer. Can we quickly run the poll again and see how many people now think that they were compliant? And then Shirley, whilst people are doing that, I think you also have something still to say.
Thank you very much. Yes, I would like to suggest that you take the opportunity to buy the manual Keyword Access to the Sectional Titles Act, which I've produced. I'm offering 200 Rand discount at the moment if you buy it and you have attended this, because then it shows that you're actually interested in learning. So send in your order. Here's the email address, and by the 30th of March. Otherwise, it's Easter and we're all away. And there's a lucky draw for someone. I do a publication which sets out very easily the very basics of sectional title. It's on PDF, so you can send it to anybody you'd like, and we brand it with the managing agent's name or the body corporate name. I'm offering it as a free thing today, and if you want to buy it afterwards, just look at my website. But it does give the owners coming into a building for the first time, especially, some basics of how the sectional title complex body corporate is running. So Daniela, I don't know how you're going to choose somebody, but
yeah, I think
numbers.
What I'll do is I will do a random draw on the people that are currently in the Zoom webinar. So give me 1 second. Let me just do a random draw.
And while she's doing a random draw, just send me whoever wins it. Please send it in, and we'll organize it for you, so you can start helping education to your owners.
Absolutely.
Can I also just as a last thing say, I'm not being paid by Shirley, but here is my access to keyword access and all the flags and all the writing on the inside. My staff gets irritated with me because I'm writing all over the books. So it lies on my desk every day. I do not function without your book. So yeah.
Thank you, Billy. You can look up anything you need to know in less than 60 seconds. Am I right, Billy?
Absolutely.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Anybody that does not know anything about sectional title can immediately get the answer by just going to the index, say, I want to know something about levies, special levies. It tells you exactly then where to go, the page number, the rule number, everything. So very, very simple. Get you there in a second.
Shirley, so I have done the quick draw, and the name of the winner today is Simone Burstein. So well done, Simone. I will get it. I'll give all your details through to Shirley after this, and she'll get in contact with you for that.
Thank you, Billy, and thank you, Daniela.
So the last thing that I just want to say is we have prepared a list. Obviously, the notes of today will be available. So Daniela will send that out. But we've also prepared a free resource that is a tick list of all the stuff that we believe that you should look at. And then you can just tick that off, and that will also sit on our website under the free resources. But we will also make that available to you guys.
Absolutely. So everything we've discussed here today will be sent via email to everyone that registered for the webinar. The slides will be made available. The recording will be made available. Plus, we have, in addition to the free resource that Willie just mentioned now, we have some previous free resources with regards to AGMs, with regards to voting and quorum calculators, that kind of thing, that you'll all find very helpful in this regard.
Budget calculator, quorum calculator, AGM packs, resolutions. So lots of free resources on the website. You can just log in there, put your email address in. That's the only thing that we require from you. And then you've got access to all of these resources, a POPI manual, a PIA manual, various other things.
Yes. And again, we don't, what is the cost of the book, Shirley?
It's normally 1,600 Rand, and you'll get 200 Rand off. And it will last you for 4, 5, 10 years, whatever, until, and I will update you with changes. So amortize that, and you'll think you'll be only spending a Rand a day. Cheap.
Madeleine, I saw you saying thank you. I hope the answer that we gave you last night, we didn't discuss your query that you asked, and I hope you got that answer that we sent to you last night.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. And we do have a lot of questions that still are unanswered, which we unfortunately didn't get to. So we will go through those and then share those answers with everyone. So thank you. And thank you so much, Shirley, for being here. We really do appreciate your input and for being part of this.
Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.